conversations. Let's have real conversations.
Get ready to stir it up.
Life events and everything in between. Let's go.
Get ready to stir it up.
No capping. If guests got you covered right up.
Get ready to stir it up. Stir it up.
Come on.
Get ready to stir it up.
Welcome to another episode of Stir It Up. Today, my guest is Ben Bath. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you.
Ben and I are going to be talking about raising daughters to be confident, independent, and, well-rounded, and how that plays within this feminist construct. So it's pretty much just understanding what he's done and sharing a bit of our experiences.
Absolutely.
So thanks again for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And I think what's really nice is that we're doing this off the cuff, and it's pretty much, I say to all my guests, it's like I've dragged you all here kicking and screaming at different points in time. So when I think about feminism, a lot of the time I think about creating opportunities for women, allowing them to be independent, equal pay. I think about conversations around preventing sexual exploitation of women and so on. I think about women taking on roles that might traditionally be male roles more and more. But what I find also is that we have a lot of feminists who've kind of earned a bit of a salty reputation.
Yeah, you're right.
And it would just be good to just get your perspective. So where do you think we could recalibrate in service of protecting the interest of women?
Well, thank you. It's quite very loaded, and considering this is something that I really, it's just a conversation.
Yes.
I'll just share my limited perspectives.
That's fine.
I don't know it all, but what I would say is that once it gains issues of it wants to be pursued as a political agenda and stuff like that, then you start having these challenges. But I think that there is significant role for feminism. Unfortunately, societal norms, upbringing, cultural and values, and sometimes, unfortunately, religion has had, a subtle or sometimes aggressive impact on how feminism is actually, perceived. Sometimes just a wrong interpretation of the scriptures. Sometimes just you don't have it and therefore you cannot give it, And so these are some of the things that have really permeated our culture and the way women are brought up. But I'm a big advocate for women.
Considering you have daughters.
Not only that, but because I was raised by my mom largely, and then I have 4 daughters. And raising them up was quite exciting, and I'm still a work in progress, but I've learned a lot through that process, and I'm very committed to it. You never know how subtle women are downplayed on many fronts. Access to certain kinds of professions, that is the preserve of men. Issues around how their focus is more about how they look than how smart or what do they bring to the table in terms of intelligence, in terms of a can-do spirit, leadership, and all that. So it is very pervasive. And in as much as some excesses had gone on and some errors had gone on, I still believe that there is place for that. And it should not in any way deter any woman or man who is a fierce advocate for women's rights to push for an agenda that sets the record straight, because not only is it biblical, history and research have proven that even in the boardrooms, that companies that had a lot of women present in the boardrooms were businesses that actually were sustainable, that thrive beyond 2, 3, 4 generations. And so, there is enough basis to support that. So I will not look so much about the excesses and how it didn't work out and the challenges most feminist activists really got themselves into. I'd rather focus on, is there a problem? The answer is yes. How do we fix it? And everybody needs to align. It's not necessarily because of egos or exerting rights about who is in charge and all that. It's so much about creating a level playing field where society is better off than we came to meet it. It's as simple as that.
You know, I'll piggyback off the conversation, you know, your comment about companies that are run by women or companies that have a lot of women in leadership thrive. And it's a comment that comes up very often. And I would agree to a large extent that it's also about making the right investments in women, right? And,
Absolutely.
And giving them
an
the
intentional approach,
yes,
not just existing in a document.
Yes.
Yeah. I could relate to. I could give you examples on that.
Go on, go for it.
In the boardroom, there were a lot of he emotions, A-type personalities across board. Words could fly here and there. And sometimes when you actually peel the onions or you break it down, it was as basic as a very simple decision. And so we had this woman who would watch us eat each other up, say all kinds of things, and then she would say, time out. Guys, get out of the room. 5 minutes. You guys come back. She would set the record straight, bring everybody. So she was the reason of, she had that gift, and it was the woman, the feminine side of her that appeals to conscience, that looks at the basics. So what do we want to achieve? At the end of the day, it's not about egos at play. It's not about who was right, who was wrong. It's about, let's look at why are we here? The advancement of the institution. And I've seen that play out in so many ways. So it doesn't just exist as a rhetoric. It's real. I've experienced it. So I endorse it, absolutely. But then the challenge then is, rather than it becoming a program which a company would just do to tick the box.
Yeah. Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Exactly. To having an intentional approach through recruitment. Because they'll tell you what, that most of the exams that women do to enter into the banking sector, a lot of women do way better than men. But when they get in terms of how they rise through the leadership, that the whole organizational structure, line of sight towards leadership, there is no intentional approach. So childbearing becomes more of a liability than anything else. Why should they suffer because of raising a child? So all of these things are things that a lot of businesses and companies need to have an intentional approach. And most of the time, it is a woman in leadership who would avert everybody's minds to it, you know, which is quite unfortunate. But it should be an advocacy that is owned by men, women, and anybody else who believes that we need to correct this anomaly. Yeah.
Got it. So you know that over time, what we call traditional gender roles are getting blurred. Recently, I did a campaign, and we're looking at
a woman.
So it's for a food brand.
For a food brand.
For a food brand. And instead of talking about, it wasn't we're talking to mothers, it was we're talking to meal providers. So
how do you define providers?
So a meal provider is who's cooking in the home, right?
Who's cooking?
Yes.
Okay.
Or who is knocking dinner together. And it was to make room for the fact that in some homes, men get home earlier than women, and they might be responsible for ensuring that the kids have had dinner, right? It's not as pervasive, but it was just beginning to be a bit more open-minded that traditional gender roles are evolving. Maybe not as much here as it is in some other countries, whether it's in the West or other parts of Africa, but it's something that's happening. Within our cultural context, do you think we are meant to be fighting this evolution of traditional gender roles, or are we meant to be taking it as an evolution and supporting
this whole
it?
activism connoted in words like fighting and all of that is, it's, well, I get surprised that one needs to fight for that when it's quite obvious that it's important, right? So let me just take a step back. I'll answer your question, but I'll relate it to my personal experience when I realized that I was having daughters. First of all, when we were getting married, we went through counseling. We had Professor and Mrs. Adai as our counselors. And they talked about the traditional role of a woman and a man in the home. They talked about the religious role of a man and a woman. Then they talked about contemporary role of a man and a woman. In the end, they situated it in the context of, yes, your traditions. Yes, religious, you're a Christian. What does the Bible say about it? But then contemporary, which is what works. Okay, under the context of a career woman, who works the same hours as you, who brings or makes the same money or maybe not so much. We'll talk about the pay adjustment. As you know, what does she have to come and cook for you after those long hours in court and all of that? Let's be practical. It doesn't work like that. So if those are your expectations, you're going to have issues. So it is, when I was having daughters, there are two things that define how I wanted to, together with my wife, raise them. Number one, modeling behaviors, modeling character, modeling it starts from the home. And so how is their mother treated? How is their mom seen? How is she appreciated? How is she encouraged? How is she affirmed? Because their mother becomes most times for women, the standard of what a woman should aspire to be. So the focus of actually, it's not about too much talk, but it's about how you see her. So investment in her career, commitment to making sure that she's doing well at whatever she's doing, creating social structures that ensures that she's not burdened with those traditional roles to the extent that it stifles her achievement and pursuit, which she's so committed to as well. But then, because of how they are raised, Obadie, Ijade, Obadie, I don't know. Bemadie. That kind of thing. Bemansu.
Yeah.
And all those things we learned growing up. So what you see is that you now need to situate it in the context of what works for the couple. It takes somebody who has not had the benefit. Personally, I had not had the benefit. A lot of unlearning had to happen, and a lot of embracing and keeping an open mind about how do I want this to work. And so there is a place for traditional role. I enjoy a particular type of soup that she's the only one who can do it in the whole world, tilapia soup. And so for that, once in a while.
But you don't need to have it every day.
No, who drinks tilapia soup every day?
So there's a place and time for that.
No, there is.
Yes.
So all I'm saying is that I wouldn't, in as much as I wouldn't bastardize traditional roles. Look, we come from you come from culture. You come from, you are a part of a family and all of that. You just in the pursuit of I'm fighting for feminist rights. That is wrong. So it is about being able to embrace all of these from a contemporary standpoint, a religious standpoint, as a result of your religious orientation. But it takes a man who can appreciate these things and not insist. Because if I were to insist, she would also insist
on certain things.
That her billable rights, her billable hours is maybe $1,000 per man work days, right? So she's going to put about 4 billable hours. How much are you going to pay for that food? So you can't really do that. Yeah. So but these things, the kids watch it. So that's the first thing I talked about, the woman that they see at home. The second one is about time. Before they are like 7, very impressionable years, they interpret time as love. Yeah. So I never believed in outsourcing parenting or bringing other people to cater for my needs and my responsibilities. Because mind you, after they all leave, you're stuck with the same woman that you started a family with. And that is when the rubber hits the road. So have you become friends? So spending time with the kids, being involved in their activities, homework, spending time with them, they interpret that as love. So your words of affirmation, or I love you,
needs to be backed up.
You need to demonstrate it. You need to live it off. And they challenge you. They keep you honest. And then having open dialogue when they get to a certain stage where they can reason and all of that, because you want to encourage them to open up to you. So you talk. And they become more like friends that you engage with. So I wouldn't be too pedantic about yes or no. There is every traditional role you ever learn, let's unlearn it. No. I wouldn't say that. In the same way on the religious side, I feel is a blend of the three, but more importantly, what works for the couple should be looked at. Yeah. What do you want to achieve at the end of the day?
Yeah. I really appreciate what you say about the way you treat their mother is a reflection of how
Absolutely.
They expect to be treated in their own future relationship. It affects their confidence. It affects their expectation, all right,
yeah.
of how they expect to be treated.
Absolutely.
And also sets a standard around what they can achieve, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that that's quite powerful, and it will be really good for us to begin to look at that as well, because you know, our daughters, for men, your daughters are everything to you.
Trust me, they have us wrapped around their little
Wrapped
pinky.
around from when they are born, literally.
Recently, second daughter was, "Daddy, my boy, kind of my fraud, Daddy." It was a birthday.
So there's so many myths, right, around feminism. And what are the myths that have stood out to you as potentially unsettling myths that your daughters could be believing, that you really think that conversations need to be had about those?
So I wouldn't say myths per se.
Okay.
You know, I pay attention to my conversations with my daughters extensively. And it may not be too categorical, so clear or delineated that it's a myth. But then it's a very subtle things that they start picking up, and it informs their disposition to, hey, do I push this aggressively or what? So I'm not biased in any way towards any, but there was a time when they were having a conversation that, Daddy, the young men, we can't figure them out. Because my daughters, they are the age where guys are courting them. I said, why? So, a guy will come say all these things to you, but in the end, they are even seeking for affirmation of their choice from their other guys. I said, why is it so? So they're not man enough. They can't own up and take responsibility for their decision and choices. So what is influencing that? So my daughter had an issue with this.
And that's a lot of mental capacity. That means she's smart, super
No,
smart to pick that
she's
up.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, you should see the twins and the things they can say. And it's because we encourage that dialogue and reading of people, interpretations on issues and all of that. And it's just as basic as, let's have a conversation. So it got me thinking that there is a challenge with young men growing up these days. And I don't know what that challenge is, but it's very deep-seated, where they are beginning to even question their masculinity and what makes a man. So that is a challenge. And I think that when we're looking at feminism, it is not about advancing, especially at the youth and the young ones, women's rights to the detriment of not even focusing on what issues are the young men dealing with, because they are dealing with a lot of issues. One, identity issues of who they are. And you see, deeply rooted in any man's masculinity are their childhood experiences. So it's a function of the homes they grew up in, the type of how a man is supposed to be. And they're not seeing it play out in the schools they go to, because there is that self-awareness about ensuring that there is equality and all of that. So it's not about myths, but it's about the fact that I'm beginning to recognize that there are deep-seated issues going on, and especially about, on the male side as well. I don't have an answer. It's something that I'm still processing, because this conversation was just last week. And so my daughters were like, if you need a guy to affirm or even confirm or even endorse your choice, then I don't want to have anything to do with you. So it's a real issue. So I don't know. I don't know how to really address this issue, but maybe we could dialogue more on this, because
No, I think that there's a lot of knocking of horns when it comes to, working in service of the rights of women, but also in service of the rights of men. And a lot of the time we look more at women being, the ones who were at a disadvantage today.
Yeah.
But the reality also is men have their own struggles, right? And I think maybe that's another conversation we need to have at a later date. And
absolutely.
Because the reality is that it's not a one-sided conversation.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Yeah. But then the knocking of heads, there is a justifiable reason for that. especially because over the years, I mean, women have not really, if you look at even pay equality, certain types of careers and all of that. So there is a place for that. But it should not be advanced to the detriment of ignoring men issues. If it is about creating a platform that ensures that there is balance and that everybody is given a fair opportunity, and the basis for evaluation is not about gender, but it's about what do you bring to the table and all of that. And women are actually given a lot more opportunities to rise. So yeah, I mean, I agree. But that is a challenge I have with sometimes how, you know, the whole, because I call myself a feminist, you know, that the whole feminist activist orientation is presented. I think it's just too abrasive, and it can be toned down, and it should embrace, you know, because trust me, in the marital home, you need a man who understands and who is willing to make room and appreciates that to make it work. You know, but then there is also a place for single mothers. My mother raised me single-handedly, and she taught me a lot. I'm a product of a lot of the things I saw her experience, and a lot of the things that she taught me. So yeah, it goes way back.
I'm going to call you girl dad from now on.
Well, not because I have other, you know, sons in godfather. I'm a godfather to a bunch of boys. There is one of them that I do play golf with. There is one that we have very deep intellectual conversations with. So there are about 7 of them, and all the male friends of my daughters want me to mentor them. Last, I think, summer, I had 3 of them from different classes intern with me. And one of the things we did was to take a golf day out. One of them was dating my daughter. And on the golf course, you see all kinds of things. Well, they didn't know how to play, but I got them to play, bought them gloves, just to introduce them to the game and teach them about what the game is all about. So with 4 daughters, I'm going to win 4 good sons.
You're gonna have 4 sons of your own.
You know, I'll be benefiting from both ends.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Yes.
I embrace it with a lot of joy. Another thing which is quite egoistical is, hey, midi beirao. The bath.
Yes.
But hey, it's their prerogative.
But if you have a daughter potentially like me, you might your name might
exactly
not disappear.
like you.
It might not disappear.
Absolutely, but I'm not really pedantic about it. I'm
Yeah.
very open-minded about it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So final thoughts. I think we've had a really rich conversation.
Absolutely. Final thought. I have a lot to share.
You do, eh?
Yeah. You know, I think there has to be a national policy similar to what is in Sweden and all of that. I mean, the Minister of Gender in Ghana, we need a properly crafted policy, because we're seeing it now in boardrooms where issues about gender is gaining significant attention. I serve on the board of a bank with some amazing women, and trust me, they are addressing the issues head on, and I respect them for that. But it can't exist in pockets. It has to be a national agenda, well thought through, because, you know, there are accounts matrilineal, and we've seen it, you know, in terms of the kings in the Ashanti culture, and it has worked for generations.
Yeah.
And it is something that even the West and other places are learning about. I think we have a very rich culture and history in Ghana where women really have a place and their voice is heard. We have very good women examples, Joyce Ayes and all of that. These stories need to be documented. We need to rewrite our history. Our kids growing up in elementary school should read about such women. They epitomize, you know, women leaders who, against all odds, this woman who was at Nkulenu, you know, and we need to rewrite our history and ensure that these women are projected in such a way that people can embrace and learn about them. It can't be only Yasantua.
Yeah.
There are many Yasantuas that are
Today.
Today.
There are many years and
Exactly.
today.
India, different jurisdictions, and they are doing amazing things. And those things need to be documented to balance the historical context, where when these kids are growing up, they pick it up very early on.
So we have all these great examples from the West. but it needs to be put within reach for our daughters.
Ghana, Obebrio.
Yeah.
We have a lot.
Yeah.
And these are women, whenever they are talking, I want to listen. Their perspective, they are in-depth, and they speak with a lot of emotions. And that is the balancing act. So I think there is space for a recalibration of our entire societal, like our historical context, to ensure that a lot of prominence is given to, or examples of women, for our young daughters to pick it up. It can't be just their mothers.
It can't be just their mothers. Their mothers are number one, but it can't be
It
just
can't
their
just be
mothers.
there. It doesn't stay there because they get out of the cocoon of a family bubble and then they get into the world. And they're like, oh, is this really real? Or it just existed in my house?
Yeah.
They need examples. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. It's been really lovely talking
Thank
to you.
you,
And I
Kia.
appreciate you for coming. Now to the fun part. It's 1 minute of me giving you a drink. Now, I know that you're not a fan of cocktails, so I'll give you a drink and you just need to tell me what it is. So give me 2 seconds and I'll have that drink ready for you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Do you want to guess what this is? I'm even wondering why I'm not letting you guess, but I'm sure you'll get it right. You can't name brands though.
It's below 18 years.
It's 16. So it's not of legal voting age.
Yeah, because of the harshness.
Okay.
It's very dark, definitely from the space side. Probably the cask is woody because it has is a woody cask.
And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying
And it's-
anything
and
else.
It's slightly peaty.
Okay.
But the peatiness is not like a
No, it's not.
yeah, neither is it a
No.
but it's definitely from the space side, and maybe we'll figure it out after I've taken a bit of 2 shots. Cheers.
Stir it up. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, girl. Always a pleasure.